So, you want to know more about tanks? Well, I know you probably don't, but guess what? We're going to learn more about them. And I'm getting ready to give you some terms, and I'm getting ready to give you some definitions, and you're going to write until smoke comes from your pencil. And then you're going to be ready to take the Module 5 test, and then you're going to be ready to pass it with an A score. I mean, you're going to be like, this is the easiest thing ever. Oh my God. Okay, so the tank parts that we're going to be talking about, there are two terms right off the bat. One is called an agitator, and I know that you're probably listening to these videos and getting more and more agitated as I talk more and more and more. But guess what? I don't care. And then we also have these things called a baffle. So we need to talk about agitators and we need to talk about baffles. What are the differences between the two? Because these things are going to be some important parts of big tanks that we're going to see in the biomanufacturing world. So agitators are going to be these big paddles or propellers or blades that turn and mix. I want you to think of the propeller blades on the bottom of a boat that get it to move. So those are going to turn and those are going to spin and those are going to mix, and they do a great job. That's an agitator. So it's agitating the solution and it's mixing it. You know what? When you're in the kitchen and you have that stock pot and you are working with an open tank and you take the lid off, you put a spoon down on the inside of the chicken noodle soup that you're making, and then you're stirring it. Guess what? You are agitating it. That's what you're doing, and these agitators are built inside of some of these tanks. So these are just big permanent spoons that turn and turn and turn and turn and turn. Next up are baffles. So what is a baffle? Well, a baffle is a vertical plate that's attached on the inside that improves mixing. Oh, now we might be learning something new. All right, so here is my awful drawing of a tank, and there's stuff on the inside, and there's an agitator on the inside, and the agitator is going to be spin and spin and spin and spin and mix and mix and mix and mix, and we're doing a great job, and we feel good about us, and we're going to get a pay raise, and I sit back and I, woohoo, yeah, give me more money. Well, okay, they're going to come around, they're going to say, you're not mixing this the proper way, it's not mixed very good, and you're going to be like, well, wait a minute, there's an agitator in there, it's stirring it, it's mixing it, what am I doing that's wrong? Well, it could be your baffles. So a baffle, yes, absolutely, a propeller stirs and stirs and stirs, a paddle stirs and stirs and stirs, a blade stirs and stirs and stirs, but guess what? The only thing that you're creating here is a tornado. Hello, welcome to Kansas, Dorothy. So the reason that maybe we are not getting a good product or a well-mixed product is that we do not have baffles on the inside of the tank. So the baffles are vertical. Vertical means straight up and down. That's what that means, of course. So vertical plates are going to be lowered down into these tanks. And then as the propeller or the blade turns and spins, well, the baffles help that tornado not to form. It allows you to get a better mixed product. So there is a video that talks about baffles that you're going to see in the YouTube lineup, and I want you to watch that. I don't think there's any video on it, or I mean audio on it. You'll see video, and in the beginning of that video, they will just have a stirrer. That is the agitator. And then you're going to see that tornado type of form. You're going to see that the stuff that's floating in solution is just going to spin, 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 spin. It's not really mixing at all. When they lower the baffles in toward the end of that video, you're going to see the presence of them, and then you're going to see how it disturbs the flow, and it increases the mixing that goes on inside of a solution, and it gives you a more well-mixed solution because of that. All right. Next up, a couple of other terms that we're seeing on the screen. Oh my God. Okay, so in the beginning, let's talk about inspection ports. All right, so inspection ports are little view screens because you're a voyeur and you like to watch. That inspection port is going to be on the front at typically eye level, that you can peer inside of these big, huge, clunky types of vats or tanks so you can see what's actually going on. So for instance, right here is an inspection port. You are able to see on the inside, you can see how full it is. You can see maybe if we're running out of stuff or if it's looking the right way throughout the manufacturing process. That is an inspection port. Some have it and some do not. We also have another term called a manway. Ooh, a manwich. I like those sandwiches. No. They're not manwich. They're manways. And what a manway is, it's a hatch that opens up so that way you can crawl on the inside of that tank and begin to clean. Have you ever seen that movie, I forgot what it was called, about the grandparents that lived in the house and they had their grandkids over? Well, who would have thought it wasn't their actual real grandparents because they never met them before? I know, crazy, right? And then Granny looks at the little kid and she goes, "Hey, would you mind getting in the oven to clean it?" Okay, well, she's crazy and she locks the kid up in the oven and then she laughs about it and then she allows that little girl to come on out. Well, okay, I don't want to be in that type of situation. I'm sorry. It's called The Visit, by the way, I believe. So I don't want to be in that type of situation, and I don't like those closed quarters. But you know what you're seeing in the picture here is a manway, and little Granny is going to be on the outside, and she's going to say, "Would you open the manway and crawl inside and clean it, please?" So we're going to open up that area of the tank, and someone's going to have to crawl down in there, and someone's going to have to clean it and do what they need to do, and then crawl back out. No one wants that job, as you can imagine, but you know, hey, if it pays enough money, I'll do anything, right? Okay, so next up are the heating and cooling coils. So heating and cooling coils do just that. They are coils, which means they're tubes that are inside of these big tanks, and they are going to either heat, so make it hot, or they're going to cool, make it colder. And that really just depends on what you're using on the inside of those tubes. So very often if you want to heat something, it needs to be some type of coolant that can get to a really hot temperature due to an outside force or maybe some steam. And then if you're going to cool it, it can also be some type of coolant that will go super, super cold, and you can keep it colder than room temperature. Or colder than ice water, at least, right? So heating and cooling coils are tubes that are on the inside, and those are going to be controlling or helping you control the temperature of the material on the inside of these tanks. Next up are jackets. So what are jackets? I'm really cold, I need a jacket, right? No, not really. Jackets do surround the outside though, but what we really refer to as a jacket, I want you to think of a little tiny straw. Okay, so here we have a tiny little straw that I have stole from Starbucks or from Chick-fil-A. And then on the straw, there is an opening, right? And that can hold some liquid, that can hold some maybe fluid that I'm working with in a biomanufacturing line. Okay, well, anyway, you get the idea. So we get this tank that is going to be the size of a straw, and I can put that straw inside of a bigger opening, and that bigger opening could be a big toilet paper holder, right? Or a toilet paper roll. So I get this container within a container almost, or a cylinder within a cylinder. That's what a jacket is. A jacket would be that toilet paper roll. So the jacket is forming what we call a double wall, and it's insulating the stuff that is on the inside. And that jacket, that double insulation, has an empty space where fluid can flow as well. So that could be something hot or that can be something cold. You know, if you have a KitchenAid mixer or an ice cream maker, very often you can get an attachment for those, and it is a bowl, and that bowl has some liquid on the inside. And that liquid is going to help get that bowl super, super cold, so that way you can make ice cream on the spot. So when you put your material down in here, all your cream and your egg and your flavor and everything else that you're using to make ice cream out of, then it's going to hit that jacketed bowl, and it's going to be super, super cold because of the filling solution that they have used to make that attachment for you. So these tanks are kind of similar, but these tanks are having lids on them. They're insulated. We can't have contamination on the inside, but you get the idea. Hopefully that's what a jacket is all about. Next up are inspection ports. We talked about these a little bit in the previous one. I don't know why it shows up a second time. Don't ask me, because this came from BioWork, not by Tracy Holberg. Next up are the rupture disc, and rupture disc are safety devices that you're going to find on these big tanks like you were seeing again here in the picture to the right hand side. These rupture discs are meant to blow. So if the pressure does get very high and someone does not do their job and control that pressure and release the pressure as needed, or something just goes out of whack and we can't control it at all and we see it go up, 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 and there she blows. Well, the rupture disc do just that. They rupture and they release some of that steam so that this entire tank that might be pressurized does not turn into a huge bomb and just completely blow up inside of the manufacturing arena. So very important piece, a rupture disc, and you're going to find them as safety devices on almost all of those tanks, especially if they do some type of pressure, right? If I've got an open lid, I probably don't need a rupture disc. It's an open lid. I'm just going to go over, I open it up, I have access to it. It's not going to build up pressure. So a rupture disc is probably not going to be found on something like that. But if it's closed, and if it's going under pressure, then absolutely rupture discs are very, very important. Sampling ports are also going to be on the tanks as well. The sampling ports are just basically pipes or some type of access that you have that you can open up a valve and drain some of the liquid out, or take a scoop and go in and scoop some stuff out. That is what we call a sampling port. So we kind of want to know, what stage is this process in? What is the quality like? What is it doing? Is it behaving the proper way? And sometimes if we just let it do its own thing for days or days or days, and we're not checking it, then there's a chance that all of that time is going to be wasted if we're not very careful. So we need to check on our products as we are using them and as we are manufacturing with them. So the sampling port allows me to have access to the material on the inside of those tanks. Next up are sensors, and sensors, there are just going to be tons of different ones. You're going to find sensors for pH. You're going to find them for pressure. You're going to find them for dissolved oxygen. You're going to find them for how full the tank is. I mean, it is just list after list after list of different sensors that can be added onto these tanks if that is an appropriate sensor for that tank. So as you can imagine, you don't get all the sensors known to man on a tank. They are going to be picked and chosen and selected based on what you're using, what you're manufacturing, and what's needed on the inside of the tanks. Next up are spargers. So spargers are basically tubes with tiny little holes, and they allow any type of gas to bubble into the tank. So I want you to think of you taking a straw and blowing through the straw into a soda. You are incorporating air into a liquid, and then you're creating some bubbles at the bottom, and then they're floating to the top and the surface, and they're getting released. That's a sparger. You have created a sparger in your own home. So what's happening here with the tanks is that very often we can have a rod that goes in here, and that rod will have tiny little holes, and we can pump air through that sparger rod. And what goes on is that it, that's what it does. I don't know if those sound effects are appropriate, but that's what it does. It just bubbles. And sometimes we need that because we might need to increase the oxygen content in that tank. As far as air goes, air is mainly nitrogen. So it just really depends on what type of situation that we have. And we do have access to bubble gases through these solutions as they're sitting, as they're reacting, as they're fermenting. And a sparger is one of those things that can be used within a tank. Next up are something called a spray ball and a spray ball. Oh, no, 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 that's the wrong sport. Spray balls are like shower heads, and they are used to clean the inside of the tanks. So what you are seeing over here to the left-hand side, this is a spray ball, and those spray balls are attached to the tanks, and those tanks are going to go through and they need cleaning. Someone's going to have to crawl into the oven, little girl. Someone's going to have to crawl in there. Okay, yeah, we know that. But there's going to be a process here, and that process can be simply just the idea that a spray head is a shower head, and I'm going to turn that on, and then it's going to and now steamy hot water gets me all ready in the morning. It makes me feel good when I get out of the bed and I feel all nice and clean and squeaky. Okay, well, that's a spray ball. These are shower heads used to clean the inside of the tank. That's what those are for. Next up are inlet and outlet valves. All right, so inlets mean it goes in, and outlets mean it goes out. Go figure. Well, inlet and outlets control the flows of stuff, so you can use an inlet valve for things to go into the tank, and you can use the outlet valve for things to leave the tank. That's what that is all about. And then finally, some vents. Of course, we need vents, right? Vents are openings typically at the very top of these tanks, and that way gases have a way to escape. So if you're not working under pressurized conditions, vents are going to be okay. You need gases to evaporate, or you need stuff to leave, dissipate, whatever the case might be, but the vents are going to allow that to happen. You can close the vents or you can open the vents. So again, think about your home and think about the vents in your home. You probably have vents in every single room from your heating and air conditioning systems, and you can shut those off and you can open those up, right? So you can kind of control what goes on and when it goes on just by a little flick of a button. Same thing happens in your cars as well. You've got vents in your car. Turn the AC on. Okay, that's great. So when I turn the AC on, well, I can open the vents and I can close the vents. If I'm super, super cold in the back seat, then I just close those vents off and nobody will be the wiser. All right. So that's kind of the idea with a spray ball. Spray balls I do want to kind of go back and talk about here just for a second. And the spray ball is a part of a what we call clean in place system. We abbreviate that as a CIP. And CIP means clean in place. So that means I don't need to take those tanks and I don't need to wheel them off to some type of shower room in order to clean them off. The only thing that I've got to do is kind of use the spray balls and kind of clean it on the spot. So we really don't have to transport it. We really don't have to do anything at all to the tank. We can clean it where it's at and everything will be okay. So they are internal. We are washing the inside, not the outside, with the spray balls. Here's a diagram, and this diagram is going to give you a better insight to more details on a bioreactor or a fermenter maybe. So as you can see, there's a huge big tank with a blue solution on the inside. And I've highlighted some terms that we just talked about. And the term that we use here for the blue solution, that's going to be called our medium, right? And that medium is going to be the swimming pool that our organic type of material is getting grown in, or our biological type of material is getting grown in. So that medium is going to have all the nutrients, it has all the food, all the things to allow that bioorganism to survive and multiply and keep on churning product if that's what we're after. As you can imagine, there are intakes. So I've got to feed it maybe a little bit more. So therefore we've got an opening for that and a valve that we can turn on and off. There's going to be steam involved maybe. So I, again, can go through, turn it on and off. A dissolved oxygen probe, I see a pH probe, a temperature probe. I see all of those here. So those are just different sensors that are built in to that big bioreactor or to that fermenter. And again, it's customizable, so I can go through and pick out what I need based on what types of things that we are doing with that system. The sparger here is at the bottom, so I told you that was a straw with tiny little holes in it. So that kind of what it looks like in the diagram. There's compressed air. That compressed air is very purified air that will go through, and we can turn that valve on, and then it will. So there's our sparger at work, and the kind of fins that you see on this big long rod that goes down into that vat. These are our propellers, or our stir bars, or our big stirring spoons that we are using in order to mix that product up with. So everything's got to stay in constant motion. We don't want things to settle, and that's going to constantly spin around and around and around and around and around and around and around. Over here to the side, you are seeing that they are pointing to that area, and that area that they have designated at least is another term that we have used, and that's called a cooling jacket. So this cooling jacket is a double walled, it's double insulated in a way, right? So we do have access to cool or heat this big tank that has my material on the inside. And it looks like we have a cold water outlet here, and maybe a cold water inlet, right? So for this particular type of situation, maybe they are keeping it chilled, keeping it cold, and we need cold water instead of hot water in order to do that. So the circulating on the outside of the jacket is getting super cold, and that's a temperature sensor is going to be needed to make sure that my temperature is in the appropriate type of range that we need when we make this product here. All right. As before, we talked about acid and base intake. Here's our rupture disc at the top. So if this begins to blow up or the pressure gets extremely high, that rupture disc will rupture, and then it will release that pressure so that way it doesn't cause more of a problem later on down the road. And then finally, a vent. So that allows me to control, well, okay, I'm going to vent it. I'm going to release some of that pressure. I'm going to allow it to dissipate. And I'm going to do that manually because I caught it and I didn't let it build up and I didn't let it go boom on me because of that. All right. Okay, so just a couple of more terms that we can now identify in this diagram. We've seen this diagram before. We saw it in a previous video. We talked about a bioreactor and kind of the basics and why we got to use them. And then that diagram was actually sneakingly in there. And the only thing I did was pull it back and be like, hey, look, here you go. This was something that we've seen. We can just now talk about extra terms that are showing up that we really didn't get to talk about in the last video when we saw that image. Some of the sensors that you will find that you will maybe be responsible to track and to monitor and to log are just constant things that we're looking at on a daily basis, maybe hourly basis, or maybe sooner than that. Flow rates, temperatures, pressures, how full is the tank, DO is dissolved oxygen or carbon dioxide levels, the pH, the agitation speed, the mixing rate. All of these have sensors. All of these have settings that we have to make sure that they are getting followed. So because of that, there's got to be extra little tools and sensors that give me that type of information. So that way I can go to my pH sensor, and my pH sensor is going to say, oh, you got a pH of 7.15. And I'm going to be like, oh no, I just killed everything. Well, or maybe not. Maybe everything survived. Or dissolved oxygen, right? So dissolved oxygen, some things need dissolved oxygen in the solution in order to kind of breathe like you. So that dissolved oxygen has a sensor that has a meter that's going to be very important. We got to make sure that we control that, making sure that it's in the realm that it needs to be in. Of course, the pressure is going to be a sensor too, right? I don't want things to blow up. I don't want things to go to an extremely high pressure where we're putting all the lives in danger. So if that happens, I hope the rupture disc takes care of that problem. But if I can kind of monitor that, and if I can catch that from happening, we don't need the rupture disc from doing its safety job. All right, so with that said, there's going to be an online get to know me bioreactor activity that you can follow through, that you can do. It's just really some click of buttons. You can click on the term. It kind of highlights where that is at the diagram or schematic. And it gives you a little summary of each one of those as we do them. And then in the second part of that online module, you're going to see something that looks like this. And it's like, hey, let's kind of go through the processes of how do we calibrate a dissolved oxygen probe. So I'm going to click that. It's going to tell me a little bit about a dissolved oxygen probe. What does it do? How do we go in? How do we baseline it? How do we tear it out? How do we make it read 0 before we get an actual reading that we might have to report on some type of document that we're going to be submitting to the company or to some of the regulatory people that will be in-house. So a very short, brief, easy activity that you just a few clicks and you're going to be finished, I promise, with the BioFlow 110 bioreactor assignment. So you'll see the link in Canvas. You'll see the link there for you to access it. It will take you directly to the site, just like it does all the other online activities. At the end of this, you're going to find that it will give you a certificate. You want to print that or take a picture of it so that way you can upload that picture as proof that you completed this activity. And of course, make sure you put your name on it so that way we know, yeah, for sure it was you that did it. So in the next video, we're going to continue on with equipment and all of the, what I would call the, I guess, process equipment that is going to be in the lineup from the production side of manufacturing. And the next kind of spin that we'll talk and that we'll discuss is the word called popping. So if I go back to one of the very first slides that we did together, we said there's a couple of things here. Number one are tanks. So ding, ding, check. I got that taken care of. Woohoo! And then the next thing that we're going to go into is called popping. So popping is the pieces that are carrying the fluid from one spot to the next. So we want to talk about popping in general and then a little bit of nuggets of information about what my job would be when I go and kind of handle the popping and do what I need to do for inspection purposes and those types of things. So that's what we'll discuss in the next video. Come back. I'm not done. I'm far from being done, folks. I'm sorry, but I'm far from it. But in the next video, we'll talk about popping.